Say hello to our friends. Say hi. Okay, so here we go. The video you've all been waiting for. The tank setup video. You can't hear it, but they're clapping. I'm sure you are too. Okay, so as I really want everyone to be successful with seahorses, I sometimes tend to go on and on. So if this video is a little too long for you, I will be doing a condensed version that just goes over the guidelines. But this video, I hope, will help you in answering any question you could possibly have as far as setting up a seahorse tank. First, we're going to look at some really cool and very successful tanks from a group that I run on Facebook. Then we'll look at the guidelines that every seahorse keeper should know to be successful, what you need to do, how you need to do it, etc. Then we'll do a brief section on cycling, and then I will actually set up my Barbouri tank in front of you. So, without further ado, let's look at some pretty tanks. So, with all the tanks out there available, which do you choose? I mean, there's so many different types. Well, really you can choose any of them. Some will be better than others, but you can make almost any tank work. The guideline you need to follow is to make sure that you provide at least 30 gallons per pair of Seahorse, and provide 30 gallons per pair or per additional pair of Seahorse. So please don't put 6 Seahorses in a 40-gallon tank. It's not going to work out well for you. The guideline is 30-gallon minimum per pair, and I will tell you now that the more water the better. The more water you have, the more room you have to make errors, and the more room you have to make improvements. You can add more Seahorses, you can fix more problems. Problems that occur aren't as deadly because you have more time and more space to fix them in. So just make sure that you stick with 30-gallon minimum per pair of Seahorses, and taller is always better because they like to swim up and down. The substrate section is pretty simple and easy to understand. You have very limited choices there. You either go bare bottom or you use sand. I will say please stay away from crushed coral or gravel type substrates because they tend to have things get caught in between the little spaces between the rocks, and that just leads to buildup of organics and a huge mess. So I would advise you to go with either bare bottom or sand. We're looking at sand, and we're looking at the tank that I'm setting up as a planted macro display for my reed eye. I'm extremely excited. I haven't done a sanded tank in a long time because I do prefer bare bottom. Bare bottom is just easier for maintenance reasons and for keeping organics low. You can remove food because you can see it more easily, but it's just not as pretty. With sand, you also have to worry about any buildup in the sand that's not good, and so it's kind of up to your own personal preference. But I would say stick with either bare bottom or sand. So, standing in front of my 90-gallon tank that I'm setting up for Seahorses very soon. I'm so excited. Anyways, I'm thinking about the 3 forms of filtration that I need to cover to make sure that the tank stays cycled and waste stays low, organics stay low. The 3 types of filtration are biological, mechanical, and chemical. The biological filtration includes the bacteria, which performs the nitrogen cycle. We can do another video about the nitrogen cycle. I don't want to go into too much detail about that today. But your rock, your porous media that you keep in a filter, even macros or algae, which most people consider a bad thing and want to keep out of their tanks, are actually a form of biological filtration. The micro and macro algae in a tank are crucial to success, and when people house them in separate areas, they can be awesome help in the biological filtration area. So the next area, of course, is the mechanical filtration, and that is anything that you use to stop or remove waste or particles or things like that. So your socks, your skimmers, your any equipment or floss or anything like that that you use to actually remove waste. Then there's chemical filtration, which is the Purigen, the GFO, anything that we use to actually remove toxins or chemicals is chemical media. So, again, with Seahorses, we really need to look at all 3 because with their level of waste, we need to make sure that we keep the tank very, very clean, and sometimes hands and water changes just aren't enough. One note I will make about mechanical filtration is that I would personally say that a skimmer is probably the most important piece of equipment, mechanical filtration, that you can get. It removes the suspended particulate matter that we don't even see, and is very, very important to keeping organic flow. So my current Erectus display was, unfortunately, was not a drill tank. Ah, you guys knocked over my Gorgonian. Naughty seahorses. Well, anyways, it was not a drill tank. We are upgrading to a drill tank soon, but we had to make do with what we had. So we added the two RW4 wave makers, which need soaked very badly, and we covered them so that ponytails don't get hurt. And we've got the pump, which is adjustable, which goes through a UV back up to the return and makes a lot of surface agitation. The wave makers float around in the tank. Obviously I use macroalgae like crazy. And then we hit the overflow box and come back down to my algae scrubber, which is no longer pretty because it fell apart on me, and I literally taped it back together, just the top. The rest is fine. But my setup is not pretty, but it works. The scrubber, the skimmer, the pump is it. That's all I run on this tank. That's it. And the macros take care of the rest. Oh, I'm sorry, UV of course, but yeah. The macros take care of it. So there's many ways to do things. You know, if it's working, it's working. Flow is one of the most important aspects of keeping a successful seahorse tank, and one of the most confusing. I'm actually going to read you a comment from Abby Underwood that just impressed me to no end, because what used to be said is that we should have almost no flow, nothing. Seahorses can't handle flow. I proved that wrong with my many Erectus videos where they're flow dancing. But still, it becomes confusing on how much is too much and how much is not enough. Abby Underwood from Seahorse Source said it absolutely best. I just love the way she put this. Made me understand it completely. She said, you want good circulation in your aquarium, enough to remove excess organics. Just turning up the flow may not have any effect, or it might make the environment stressful. I've personally experienced that. Having too much flow can be a bad thing, and then the seahorses won't swim around. Not having enough, obviously, you'll get dead spots and bad algae and buildup of ciliates and all sorts of terrible stuff. So anyhow, back to Abby. Having the flow broken up to reach most of the areas of your aquarium will provide a healthier environment. Turnover should be matched to your filtration. Picture leftover food in your sink that you want to go down the drain. Turning up the water flow on the faucet, remaining stationary, does nothing or very little to get rid of the excess and can cause an even greater mess by splashing it around. It is better to use a combined means, like using the sprayer to get rid of excess food. You also don't want to have your aquarium under hurricane conditions all the time. The problem is that it is documented all over the internet that seahorses need slow flow, so many aquariums do not have proper circulation. Awesome analogy. Picturing the food in the sink did wonders for me because I finally got it. If you put all of your eggs in one basket, if you have all of your flow coming out of a return or hob outlet or whatever, it's directional. It's only going one spot. Even if it does spread through the aquarium, it's not enough. So that's why instead of saying the usual, oh, you should have 10 to 15 times turnover rate, I'm going to tell you, you need to have 10 to 15 times turnover rate based on filtration. Meaning, it'd be very easy to do about 10% through the filtration method or the sump, hob, whatever, and then have a power head or wave maker or whatever to provide the other 5 to 10%, meaning that it's more throughout the tank. Flow needs to be throughout the tank, not one directional. Seahorses are not afraid of flow, but you just can't have way too much. So the guideline or goal is 10 to 15% minimum turnover, and that should be through combined methods.
It's chilly. I think I should turn it up a little bit.
Tisk tisk. Sweaters. I've done a couple of different videos on this channel so far about treating illnesses and treating bacterial illnesses. Well, that is the main reason that we keep our tanks at a certain temperature. A lot of people will say, wait a minute, seahorses come from tropical climates or whatnot. Well, sure, they do. The reason that we want to keep the tanks below 74 degrees is because the bacteria that can hurt them cannot survive as well under 74 degrees. The higher the temperature, the easier it is for those bad bacteria like Vibrio to take over and hurt the seahorses. Keeping the temperature low does a couple of different things. It slows things down as far as bacteria is concerned, and it just feels good. Who doesn't want to sit in cool water? I'm kidding, but stop. As far as tank mates, I'm gonna mainly let my friends in the Facebook group share their experiences because I play it safe. I don't add anything besides snails to my tanks. You won't find other fish in my tanks because I am trying to breed and because I'm just overcautious. If you want to be sure that your seahorses are number one and that you never have to worry about anything bringing anything in, do like me and just do seahorses and snails. That's it. You've got the snails to clean up, the seahorses to enjoy. There's nothing wrong though with adding different kinds of soft corals, gobies, any fish that aren't fast eating and aren't aggressive would work, and any soft corals that don't sting that don't let off toxins. Just be sure that they can't hurt the seahorses, and then we should be okay. I will link below a list about further information regarding safe corals and safe animals for a seahorse tank. But I personally don't use any. Even different species of seahorses come from different waters. Even if you buy all captive bred seahorses, they're still in different tanks and possibly in different breeder tanks. Therefore, they're in different waters. There's always a risk that one seahorse will bring a pathogen to the tank that the other seahorses cannot handle. Using quarantine and other procedures can help avoid this issue, and I hold no judgment towards those who mix seahorses, but I will suggest that any new seahorse keeper stick to species only, at least at first. The other issue is that different seahorses have different behaviors. They eat differently, they're more shy or more active, and knowing the seahorse species that you're dealing with before mixing them can help a happy union. Lighting is actually one of the easiest things on the guideline list because you can use just about any. Actually, with an average regular seahorse tank, I would advise lower lighting. Bright lights, loud noises, things like that can stress and spook a seahorse. And so as long as your light is bright enough for you to see them and enjoy them, I would say that's probably good enough. Using any of the reef lights or better lights could result in algae growing, and that's not usually what we want when we're trying to keep the tank clean. If you are going to use macroalgae as a form of filtration in your tank, then lighting changes. Then you're going to need a plant light or a light that will grow macros. My personal light is the SB Reef Plant Light. I adore it. It's awesome. It grows my macros like crazy, and it's pretty. I can change the channels and the spectrums and so on and so forth. I'll go into macros, of course, in a future video, but for this video, what we need to know is for a regular seahorse tank, all you need is a regular aquarium light. That's it. Nothing special. If you're going to grow macros, make sure that you are providing them the light that they need. Oh my goodness, there's all these test kits, all these equipment. Parameters are not as difficult as they seem. All you have to do is make sure a few things are in the target range to make sure that your seahorses stay in comfortable conditions. I'm going to put a list below, or link, below, of a listing of the parameters that are acceptable. But the most important things to test for are salinity, using a refractometer. That is because you might have to top off with fresh RODI water, not fresh salt water, if your salinity gets too high. Evaporation makes water go out of the tank, put simply, and then your salinity, the salt within the tank, will stay. So as the water leaves and the salt stays, obviously the salinity will rise. So using a refractometer to tell your salinity will tell you if it's risen, and you can put distilled RODI, fresh water in to compensate and to adjust. The other important parameters to watch are ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate, of course. Just making sure those bacteria and other filtration methods are working as we want them to. And then, if there's a problem, you might want to test your pH, your calcium level, your alkalinity level. There are a couple different parameters, well actually there are many parameters that you could test. The most important things to test are salinity, ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. And as long as those are doing fine, then you're doing fine. If the seahorses start acting up or things start looking funny, then is when to start testing pH, alkalinity, calcium, etc. Well, that was a lot of information. Sometimes I go into so much detail trying to explain that I overcomplicate things. So let's recap. You need a 30-gallon tank per pair of seahorses, and taller is better. Bare bottom or fine thin sand substrate is best, and you need to make sure that you have enough biological and mechanical filtration to handle the heavy bioload of seahorses. Chemical filtration should not be used until after cycling. Your water flow should be 10 to 20 times turnover rate based on tank volume, and you should use combined methods such as your filter return plus a wave maker to avoid dead spots. Creating surface agitation is crucial for oxygen exchange, and your temperature should remain under 74 degrees. Tank mates should be non-aggressive, slow-eating and swimming fish or non-stinging corals. Lighting for a seahorse-only tank can be an LED to create less heat. Macros will need a plant light, and corals will need a reef light. Your parameters need to be 0 ammonia nitrite. Your tank needs to be fully cycled, and pre-cycling the rock can help to avoid problems. You should stick to one species per tank until you understand your seahorse's needs, and always quarantine anything new that you add to the tank. Seahorses need to be fed 2 to 4 times a day with mysis, and gut-loading live foods with enrichments and probiotics give them that extra stuff that they don't get from frozen foods. Water changes should be done minimum every week, and all uneaten food must be removed, so daily is better. Seahorses bought from a reputable breeding program will be less likely to have parasitic or bacterial issues. They'll be used to tank life, eat frozen foods readily, and help support conservation of the wild. You can also go to Seahorse Keeping Made Fun, a Facebook group, for any help from experienced breeders and keepers. I will put a link in the comments about how to cycle dry media, but I wanted to touch on it briefly because it's helped me so many times. This process involves buying pure ammonia, putting all of your dry media or rock into a tub of salt water, adding a bottle of Dr. Tim's One and Only Bacteria or your preferred bacteria, and then dosing the ammonia to 2 ppm. You then test the water over the next few days and watch the ammonia level drop. As it drops, you add more ammonia, bringing the level back up to 2 ppm. You continue to do this, testing and adding more ammonia until you can add a full 2 ppm of ammonia and within 24 hours get a reading of 0 as far as nitrites and ammonia. This method has helped me so many times. I merely add ammonia now and then, and I have cycled media ready and waiting for emergencies or new tanks. A couple of notes: you never want to let the ammonia level in the water rise above 5 ppm or it will stall the process, and the pH has to stay above 7 or the bacteria will die. So you do need test kits to perform this process. But having cycled media and rock ready and waiting is priceless. Okay, so we've got a rock pile that is now cycled based on testing. It's time to build a real tank.
Uh-oh.